Good morning, madam. Shall we start?
Hello, Dr. Babu. Good morning.
Good morning, madam. Good morning. I think we shall start now. Okay.
Just give me 1 second. A very good morning to one and all present here. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for this enlightening lecture on the Indian knowledge system, where we dive deep into the vast and profound wisdom that has shaped civilization for millennia. My name is Anushka Gauryar, and I'm thrilled to be your co-host for this very special guest lecture.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kushi. We are so excited to have you all here for what promises to be an insightful and inspiring session. The Indian knowledge system is not just about the past, it continues to influence and inspire modern thought, from holistic health practices to sustainable living, from artificial intelligence to space research. We have an extraordinary guest with us today, and we cannot wait to conversation.
Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Please make sure your microphones are on mute unless speaking. And if you'd like to ask questions, we'll have a dedicated Q&A session toward the end. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand feature. Feel free to jot down your thoughts, stay engaged, and enjoy the session.
Before we begin the lecture, I would like to extend my gratitude to Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, head of the Institute of Amity School of Languages, for providing this wonderful opportunity.
Dr. Professor Kumkum Ray is the founding director at Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow campus, who was instrumental in the drafting of the course curriculum for English, communication skills, business communication, and added mandatory courses at AUUP. Member of the Area Advisory Board, she was awarded the Best Thesis Award for her PhD degree on Henry Louis Vivian D, the first Anglo-Indian nationalist poet. She is an educationist and poet activist with 42 years of experience in teaching. I would like to invite ma'am to say a few words and address the gathering.
To you, and trying to remember, have I really done all this? Because I still feel I'm learning and there is so much to learn. And I'm so proud today to see you, Dr. Nandini Sahu, join us and give your precious words to our students. First of all, congratulations for becoming the Vice Chancellor and all the best for the road ahead. You've been a real sincere hard worker, and I'm so very thankful to you, because my students will see you as a role model and hear your precious words. So thank you so much for giving your precious time, Dr. Sahu, and all the best to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insightful words. We are indeed honored to listen to you.
Now, without further ado, it is our absolute pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu. Our honorable guest, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu, is currently the Vice Chancellor at Hindi Vishwavidyalaya, West Bengal. She is also the Amazon best-selling author and major voice in contemporary Indian English literature. She has won 3 gold medals in English literature and also the award of All India Poetry Contest in 1993 at St. Xavier College, Ranchi, and Shiksha Ratna Puraskar. She is also the editor-in-chief of Interdisciplinary Journal of Literature and Language. I welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and a warm good morning to all of you. Thank you, Amity School of Languages, for having given me this opportunity to share my experiences as a scholar or as a researcher of Indian knowledge systems, working since 2 decades on the subject. Today, I'm not going to really deliver any structured kind of a lecture, or I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Dr. Kumkum Ray, for your kind words, and Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad for having invited me. You are my host. I would just go back a little bit. It's a bit nostalgic. I met Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad probably before 15 years or maybe more than that. And last many years, he has never been out of touch with me. He has always been talking to me, chatting with me about his work, about my work. Whenever I have a good publication or I have an achievement or anything, he's the first person to get in touch with me. And Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad, apart from being a very, very sincere scholar, he's my student, right? Apart from being a very, very good scholar, he is a wonderful human being. So I could not say no to his invitation. He has been in touch with me since quite a few days now, taking dates from me. I've been too busy since I took over this responsibility of the position of the Vice Chancellor in Hindi University. It's a language university, and we are designing a lot of MA programs, almost 30 MA programs under a new department called comparative world literatures. We are taking the 22 Indian languages, we are taking foreign languages, we are taking an MA program in tribal literature, one in folk literature. So a lot of work we are doing, and today I would be sharing some of my experiences since last 2 decades, as I already told you. I joined IGNO, Indira Gandhi National Open University, the world's largest university, in the year 2006. And then we do a need assessment survey before we design any academic program. We do a need assessment survey regarding the existing programs and what are the new programs that we need to design or develop, and what is the need of the hour. What do the students need? We design programs keeping in view the needs of the students. So in the year 2006 and 7, I did the need assessment survey, and I got to know that there was no academic program on folk literature in my university. But I had been working on folklore for 6 or 7 years since I was doing my PhD in Shantiniketan. Even since my childhood, I had been deeply associated with the tribal folks. So my interest as a person, my interest as a researcher and a teacher led me to design the country's first ever MA in folk literature with near about 20,000 pages of printed material. You can go to the IGNO website and you can type MA in folklore and culture studies, MA FCS, that is open access material, and you will find whole lot of study material on MA in folklore and culture studies. After that, in the year 2024, before I left IGNO, and I mean not left, I took EOL, I took Lien from IGNO, and I went to Hindi University as the Vice Chancellor. I offered one course, stories from Siddhantas Puranas, stories from epics, Puranas and Siddhantas. That's a part of our FYUP, 4 years degree program. And it's a compulsory course for all the students of the university from BA, become BSc, and everyone has to read that course, stories from Siddhantas, Puranas and epics. And that course is already in the eGyan course in the website. If you are not able to find it, I am going to send it to Babu Rajendra Prasad after this lecture. He can share the material with each one of you. And that course is basically on Indian knowledge systems. And this is my most recent book, Hindu Studies, Foundations and Frameworks. And this book basically is about the Hindu literary pedagogy, how the Hindu literary texts, or it's not exactly about Hinduism as a religion, it's about the Hindu literary pedagogies and how they are closely associated with liberal humanism, with green cultural studies, with blue humanities, with environmental studies, and also with all other religions of the world. Sanatan Dharma, how it is closely associated with humanity. The book is basically about that, and the second volume of the book is coming up, Hindu Studies, Texts and Context. That will be published next month, and that is under publication. So both the books, I'll send copies of both the books to Babu Rajendra Prasad so that he can distribute it in your library. I mean, keep in your library, people can read if they like. And my close association with Indian mythology is known to almost all the scholars who are working on my poetry for their PhDs, MPhils, and also the universities who have taken my books as a part of their syllabus. And this is one of those Sita, and this is my book Sita. It's a long poem of 25 cantos. I'm going to republish this after 10 years of its publication. Sita, a long narrative poem. It is coming. It's already published and it will be available on Amazon within a week or so. I have added 5 more cantos and almost 50 more pages to the book, Sita, a long narrative poem. Here I have taken the character Sita from Ramayana and I have placed her vis-a-vis as contemporary women, even men. There is a Sita-ness in everybody. In our patience, in our perseverance, in our non-violent protest, or our pursuit of knowledge systems, and being close to the ecology and environment like Sita was, and the Satyagrahi that she was. Mahatma Gandhi was closely connected with the idea, the cult of Sita, and he has written in many of his letters that I am a Satyagrahi like Sita, non-violent protest. So I have taken all those things and then I have put Sita in a very, very contemporary manner, the progressive, independent, free-thinking Sita, who doesn't brood, cry, or complain regarding some kind of injustice being done to her. Rather, she takes life in her stride. So this is how I'm just trying to place myself in the context of Indian knowledge systems. And in due course of my lecture, I'll take this lecture for 1 hour. And in due course of my lecture, I will come to discuss off and on about my syllabus that I designed for Indian knowledge systems and also the part of UGC NET examination. Indian knowledge systems is coming up in a big way. The government of India, if you look at the national education policy document, you will find that the government of India is giving a lot of importance to Indian knowledge systems. Now, what is Indian? What is knowledge and what is a system? The students, you have to understand Indian knowledge systems by deconstructing the phrase Indian, Bharatiya, something that is elementally Indian, like our folklore, like our mythology, our mythical texts, our classical literatures, our tribal studies. These things are very, very Indian. So the government of India is trying to take these things as a part of the syllabus of higher education departments. And also school education, you look at the school text, they are introducing a little bit of Indian knowledge systems and they are orienting the students so that when they grow up, they will be in a position to understand Indian knowledge systems. Now, the course that I am talking about is stories from epics, Puranas and Siddhantas. Basically, you will be surprised to know I elementally designed that course for the BSc nursing people for the Department of Energy. And then there are chapters like very, very scientifically presented knowledge systems from Indian mythology, like Surya Siddhanta, Pancha Siddhantika, Siddhanta Shiromani. I have taken the clue from, Newton and Galileo kind of scientists who created a theory which was very much there in the Indian knowledge systems. We will discuss a lot about that in due course of my lecture. There are chapters on surrogacy and childbirth technologies in our knowledge systems. We have given examples from Madhuri and Kunti and all those characters from the Mahabharata and many other literary texts, many other scriptures from our mythology. And then we have chapters on Pushpak Viman and aviation technology. Without claiming that Ravan had already an aeroplane and he was actually flying, we are giving the importance of the power of imagination in our literary texts from the Indian knowledge systems, where the writers imagined that this technology can allow a kind of vehicle or a kind of something to fly. The flying technology, they have talked about the flying technology. If you look at the many Mahabharats, if you look at the many Ramayans, not just the so-called mainstream, but also the folk Ramayans and the folk Mahabharats, there are multiple. In the Indian context, there is no dichotomy between Deshi and Margi. There is no dichotomy between the high and the low. Unlike the Western literary texts or mythical texts, where high and low cultures are very, very distinctly clear, in Indian knowledge systems, the high texts and the low texts, I will not say high or low, I will put them within quote because there is nothing high, nothing low when it is about folklore and tribal studies and Indian knowledge systems or Hindu studies for that matter. So those texts, they exchange hands. and they equally contribute to the making of the contemporary, the modern Indian literature, the Bhasha literatures, the 22 Indian languages and more than 7,000 folk languages, tribal languages. We have so many languages here, so many literatures. So we exchange hands with our Bhasha literatures, between our Bhasha literatures, through translation. So when you design any course or any program on Indian knowledge systems, you have to look at translation as a tool. And the Government of India in the NEP document, it gives emphasis to translation. India being a multilingual, a pluricultural country, languages and cultures, the exchange between those basically will depend on translation studies. So we'll also talk about that. So you look at the UGC NET syllabus, couple of UGC NET syllabi, I would recommend all of you to have a look at. Folk literature, exam number 71, look at the syllabus of folk literature UGC NET syllabus. Look at the UGC NET syllabus of Indian knowledge systems. Also have a look at the UGC NET syllabus of Hindu studies. We are trying to revise them, introduce new things every year, every couple of years, a lot of new things are coming up. So Indian knowledge systems is definitely a subject that is evolving every single day. Maybe after this webinar, when I have an interaction with you, I can take new ideas from many of you. Many of you might be working on a few subjects which I might not be knowing. So Indian knowledge systems is so vast and so evolving, and new things come up. When as a teacher of English literature, I have been teaching English since 2 decades or more now in various universities, mostly in IGNOU, and then also many universities before that. So I'm trained in British literature and American literature. I have designed courses on British literature and American literature, on post-colonial studies, and on British romantic literature, and on so many things that are the so-called mainstream. I will never claim that we should get rid of those subjects that we have been reading. English teachers cannot get rid of those subjects, British and American and Australian and Canadian studies. We have to read those. But we are going through a very beautiful and a flexible time when we can include more number of subjects. That is where Hindu studies and Indian knowledge systems will come up. Even folk literature and tribal literature will come up. We have to introduce those subjects as a part of our MA courses, as a part of our MA English. In MA English, we need not necessarily put only British literature or American or Canadian or Australian literature. We must put in our MA English courses, we must have folk literature. We must have Indian knowledge systems. We must have Indology. So those things can come up, as some of them can be compulsory courses, some of them can be elective courses. We have to plan our syllabus accordingly. I am on the board of studies of many universities in the country today. I think almost all the universities in the country are looking forward to having Indian knowledge systems and Hindu studies and folk literature in their MA courses, and they are in touch with me. If Amity School of Languages, you want to introduce Indian knowledge systems and Hindu studies and folk literature in your syllabus as elective courses for the time being and compulsory courses at a later stage, please get in touch with me. I can share my study material with you. They are open access material, and knowledge sharing is knowledge production. So I will not shy away from sharing the entire material, thousands and thousands and thousands of pages that we have written, edited, and flawlessly designed the material and posted, and we have shared on our websites. And some of the material we are yet to share. I am willing to share my entire material with you. Of course, you have to give copyright to my university, and then you can use those as a part of your research material. Your students can use them. So please feel free to get in touch with me if you want to introduce Indian knowledge systems and Hindu studies and folk literature. I will be open to share my study material. Anyway, when Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad told me that, ma'am, we want a lecture with you on Indian knowledge systems, I thought about a few titles and also about a few research questions that I asked myself to address in this lecture. And the title of my lecture today is Indian Knowledge Systems, the Critical Pedagogy. You know what? The problem with Indian knowledge systems or Hindu studies, even folk literature, the problem with these kind of subjects is people don't think about the theorization and the critical pedagogy. They think, Hindu studies is full of stories, like stories from Ramayana. stories from Mahabharata. Or when it is folklore, people think it is Nach Gana, dance music, folk dance, folk music. So they don't get into the depth of the subject. They don't look at the subjects from a theoretical standpoint. Neither they look at these subjects from a pedagogical standpoint. But we have to think about those. In higher education classes, for example, in a PhD coursework session, which I take all the PhD coursework sessions with my university, IGNOU, as well as in the university. So if I go and tell them the stories of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are not going to listen to me because all of them know the stories. Then what am I going to teach? In a classroom of Indian knowledge systems or folk literature, I have to look at the critical theories. See, for example, very recently when I was taking one class on the Mahabharata in the Indian knowledge systems, in Indian knowledge system session, I talked about Foucault and Derrida, and also I talked about the idea of the panopticon. In a panopticon, you know, someone is in the center in a glass room, and then the subject is in the center of the classroom, and the state, everyone is watching the subject. Subject means the individual. The individual is widely, openly exposed to the entire world because the individual is sitting in the glass room. So that is the idea of the panopticon. You can Google about the panopticon, you will find a whole lot of, you know, information regarding that. It's physical. And then from a counter panopticon point of view, for example, when Draupadi is disrobed in the Kurusabha, then Draupadi is in the center, she is the individual, and the entire state, the system, the power, they are watching Draupadi, her nudity, her, you know, yet to happen nudity, of course. They are watching and she is exposed. She is completely exposed, or she is about to be exposed. Now, if you look at it from the counter panopticon point of view,
Sorry, myself.
this is the power, center of power. So, yeah, anything? Okay, so she is the power, so she could protect herself. She was not exposed. Her nudity was not exposed. So she protected herself, and in the process, standing in the center of the panopticon, she exposed the mental nudity of quite a few people who could not protect her, who did not come forward to protect her. Rather, she used her spiritual powers. She invoked Lord Krishna, her Sakha, and then she protected herself. So these kind of things, you know, you take chunks, you take slices of life from our texts, from our folk text, our tribal text, our text from the Hindu literary pedagogy, and then you present those to our students in a manner where they can theorize, they can critically examine, they can rethink about the presentation of those texts. So that is where the role of English teachers like you and me will come. The teachers of literature like you and me will come, even in Bhasha literatures. Very beautiful texts are coming up which are closely related to, you know, Hindu studies and Indian knowledge systems and folk literature, and they are presented in a very, very critical manner. New perspectives are coming up. So my suggestion to the teachers should be, look at the literary texts, or I mean, look at the text from Indian knowledge systems, like from medicine. You look at folk medicines, you look at our mythology and the medicinal systems. You look at food culture studies, the food that we eat today. Somehow we those techniques from our knowledge systems, folk food, folk medicine. And there are so many systems like our music, contemporary music, dance, all the classical dance forms, they have a folk form. And they originate from a folk form, like Odissi, Bharatanatyam kind of classical dance forms. You do a research on them, you will see that they originate from some or other kind of folk dance. So the basic research of Indian knowledge systems is to go back, to find the origin, because nobody found the origin of our powerful, very rich, strong literary traditions, dance, medicine, food. Now, food culture study people, they are working on a kind of part of our knowledge systems. The spices, the masala that we use today, they date back to our tribes and our folks. So how do we use those folk food techniques, or the folk dance, or the music, or instrumental music? Everything has an origin in our knowledge systems. So this is our responsibility now to go to those traditional knowledge systems, do some research and justify and prove and present it to our next generation that whatever they are using today, enjoying today, like Coke Studio. Look at the Coke Studio music. That is so beautiful, so powerful, but it has a folk background. So our youngsters should know that whatever they are using today is not Eurocentric. They think that it's European music, it's American music. No, it's not. Whatever contemporary music or food or culture or medicine or things they are using, they have the origin in our Indian knowledge systems. And we have to say that to our students, our next generation, loud and clear, that collaboration is the key. In the Hindi University, when we do the collaboration between foreign languages, like we are trying to launch 6 foreign languages MA courses and 22 Indian languages MA courses, and then folklore and tribal studies, we are actually comparing. We are not trying to reject or get rid of or go away from any foreign culture or any European culture or language or whatever we have been reading. Rather, we are creating a collaboration. We are creating an interface. We are trying to create, a connection, a comparison, and comparative literature is coming up in a big way. Many universities are thinking about comparative literature departments and courses. Many already have, and Hindi University is thinking about comparative world literature. When you say comparative world literature, you can take the world cultures and world languages and you can create a collaboration. So this is where I think Indian knowledge systems will play a major role. Now, in today's lecture, I have a few research questions. The first one is, how can Indian knowledge systems be critically engaged without falling into the dichotomy of hyper-nationalism and colonial epistemology? There is always the fear that we can get into hyper-nationalism when it is Hindu studies or Indian knowledge systems. We have to check that. We have to create a balance. We have to create comparative pedagogy. So dichotomy of hyper-nationalism and colonial epistemology are two extreme things. We can get into the traps of those. People do not read Indian knowledge systems, they just judge. Without reading, they give opinions. We have to work about that. When somebody is working on Hindu studies, when this book came on Hindu studies, some people told me, Nandini, you are into Hinduism? Yes, I'm a Hindu. I'm a born Hindu, and I think I am happy about it. But at the same time, when it is a book about Hindu studies, please read the pedagogical approaches. Please read the comparative analysis. I have taken Sufism and Bible and Islam and a whole lot of Hindu literary texts, and I have made a comparative interpretation. How the basic spirit of all religions is one and the same. And then how we can misinterpret them, and then how we have to interpret them. So liberal secularism of Hindu literary pedagogy is the spirit of the book. So this is what I have tried to present in it. But then somebody wrote me long messages that, oh, you are into Hinduism now, you hate other religions. No. When you work on Indian knowledge systems and Hindu studies, you don't hate other religions. Rather, you are inclusive about all religions. You are flexible about all religions. So this is what is the idea of the book through textual interpretation. My book is entirely about texts. It's not about ideologies. It's not about any particular ideology which may hate other or dismiss other ideologies. The book is not at all about ideology. The courses that I have designed are not at all about any ideology. They are about ideas. They are about texts. So this is where you have to prove yourself that you are a teacher of language and literature who is basically presenting the scriptures as literary texts and then creating a parallel between all the religious scriptures in a very literary, pedagogical and theoretical manner. So this is what I've been trying to do forever. Today, everyone is talking about Hindu studies and Indian knowledge systems, but I have been working on these since 20 years. 20 years is a lifetime. My first course on indigenous knowledge systems came in 2007, which is more than 18 years now. And I have been working on these things forever. So this is not new to me. Every day I learn new things. Well, my next research question on this presentation is, to what extent does the current pedagogical approach to Hindu studies allow for an intersectional and critically interrogative framework? That is my next question. Then my third question is, how do Bhasha literatures challenge the dominance of Anglophone and Sanskritic narratives in the study of Indian literature, and what are the implications for knowledge production? Do Bhasha literatures actually challenge? Are we challenging Sanskrit, or we are including more of Sanskrit into our syllabus design? Like when I wrote this book, Hindu Studies, I did a course. I actually enrolled into, at this age, I enrolled into a course of Sanskrit literature, and I learned it. Because I didn't want to read everything in translation, I wanted to read some original text, and I succeeded to some extent because it's such a vast language, one cannot learn it in 6 months' time. But still, I did it. So the question is, how do Indian Bhasha literatures challenge or accept the dominance of Anglophone and Sanskritic narratives? Do they actually do it? And my next question is, what are the epistemic tensions between Indian English literature and regional literatures in terms of their placement within the global literary economy? Economy is big deal. Through literature and through study of Indian knowledge systems, we are also influencing the economy of the country. How? When our universities are introducing these kind of courses, look at Amity University. You are a very rich university. I have visited Amity University several times. I think Dr. Kumkum Ray knows me through that. I have been there to deliver lectures and to make selection committees and all of that. I have been going to Amity University since long.
Yes,
Such a beautiful
yes,
campus.
very right,
Yes.
Dr. Sahu. I have known you
Yes.
from a very long time, and I always was very inspired because I wanted to revive the Indian knowledge systems, not so much as a national pride or this thing, but as a revival of what our knowledge was through generations, through thousands of years. And, I have established a center of excellence on Indian knowledge systems, but I could do that after the NEP 2020 stated it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it was not really very acceptable.
Okay.
So that's how I have been following your writings, your books, your lectures, and I find that very interesting.
Right. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for being so attentive about my work. I truly appreciate it. And well, when it comes to introducing Indian knowledge systems in the syllabi of universities, like Dr. Roy said that they have introduced in Amity after NEP, but we have introduced it in 2007. So that is how the whole world is looking at my courses and my texts now. This Hindu Studies book has already been introduced. It is just 2 months or less than 2 months, 45 days the book is launched. Within 45 days, 6 foreign universities have taken it in their MA courses. The Hindu Studies in as an Oriental framework, and they have introduced that in their MA in Indology, Indic Studies, and all of that. So I'm so glad and I'm so happy and proud that people are looking at India now. The whole world is looking at India. They have been using Indian knowledge systems. If you look at W.B. Yeats and T.S. Eliot kind of writers, or even so many Western, like Hermann Hesse Siddhant, or T.S. Eliot's poetry, he uses a lot of Bhagavad Gita. W.B. Yeats' poetry, he uses a lot of Indian knowledge systems, like the mysticism in India. So many European writers, American writers have been using Indian knowledge systems, but we never looked at those. And in this book, and also in my courses, couple of chapters talk about Indian philosophical influences on Western literature. One chapter in this book. So how Indian philosophy and Indian literature, they have been the frameworks, they have been the influential factors to European and American literatures. Isn't it so important for us now to be proud of our own knowledge systems? And in WB's classroom, we talk about symbolism, allegory, language, and then the mythology that he uses, but not Indian mythology. He uses Greek mythology. Suppose in poems like Leda, and this, we talk about so many foreign elements and also so many Eurocentric worldviews that these poets use, but we don't talk about Oriental worldviews, Indian worldviews that these poets use, these writers use. And now this is time for us to look at those. There is one open access paper, if you just search Nandini Sahu's paper on the influence of Orientalism on Occidentalism, you will find a very lengthy 25-30 pages paper where I have taken out poet after poet, writer after writer, how they have used Indian mythology and folklore. So I have been trying to dig in the past and applying how India has been an influential factor. Which text is more powerful than the Vedas? The text and our Panchatantra actually changed the game of the world literature. But we have not been talking about in our classroom on repeating on Wordsworth and Shelley and Keats and Byron and Shakespeare. Well, even I do that. But we have to also talk about how those poets and those words basically elementally influenced by Indian knowledge system. So this is where the role of your centers like Kumkum Ray Madam or Babu Rajendra Prasad, I would recommend that you create some courses on the Oriental influence on Occidental literatures. That will create a new area for your students. Make your students do their MPhil and PhD on those. Well, another question that I have asked myself before this lecture today is, how can Bharatiya linguistics reclaim its space in global linguistic discourses without being reduced to nationalized rhetoric or kind of the narrowness in our Hindu pedagogy. Hindu pedagogy is very, very open and flexible and inclusive. So that is one question when you can think about in what ways have colonial and post-colonial knowledge structures marginalized India's contribution to science and technology, and how can a critical pedagogy rectify this exclusion? We have been excluded. You look at our Charak Samhita kind of text, or Gargi Maitri, Apala, Kusa, Vishwavara kind of excellent experts and scholars from our Indian knowledge systems, from our Vedic studies, and they have contributed so much to science. That's a process. A doctor from AIM is my student. My students are very senior professors and doctors, and I'm so proud. My most senior student is 97 years old, and my youngest student could be 18 years old. So that range of students I have. So one doctor from AIMS is doing a project on Ayurveda and Unani as knowledge systems and how they have influenced the modern allopathic medicinal systems. So look at that. He talks about how in Indian knowledge systems, before thousands and thousands of years, there was surgery. People used to do the surgery. Surgical systems were there. And then we think that surgery is an invention of the West. It's actually not so. In Indian knowledge system, surgery was very much there. The medicine, the food, we are talking about those in our courses. And then another question is, what are the limitations of integrating Ayurveda and the Siddha into contemporary medicines, and the gap between traditional and modern medicines? People think that traditional medicines cannot cure, but we are questioning that, because the peer-reviewed medicines and non-peer-reviewed medicines are different. If today I have a heart attack or something, or I have a very serious ailment, I'll go to the hospital for allopathic treatment. Definitely, I'll do that. Everyone will do that. Immediately, you go to the peer-reviewed medicines, which are the allopathic medicines. But then, in our Ayurveda and Unani kind of knowledge systems, there are cures which are like holistic. You take those for years and years, and in due course of time, it can cure your body from within. So this doctor is making a project on that. He is an allopathic doctor, and he's a very senior doctor. So he gives the importance of the peer-reviewed medicines like allopathy. But then in the further chapters, he talks about our traditional medicinal systems, how they can cure a person from within to, not to create those ailments in our body. So probably with research, he will come up with some conclusion. I'm waiting for him to submit the thesis. And then my next question is, okay, the previous question is, what are the limitations of Ayurveda and Siddha? So I'm also questioning the limitations. Not that I'm only glorifying or romanticizing. I'm also talking about the limitations of knowledge systems. Like in folklore, there is one big limit. Folklore is very rich. I am an expert of folklore. I have designed Indian folk literature course after course. But the limitations are about copyright and about authenticity. There is something called fake lore. You Google folklore, F-A-K-E, folklore as a literary theory, you will find interesting essays there. People present something wrong and they claim it is folk, but that is actually folklore. So I question folklore. I question the integration, the limitations, but also I talk about the positive aspects. Then my answer to that is, when we talk about folklore or we talk about limitations, there should be also an answer. You can't just question and leave it at that. The answer is, what methodologies should be employed in critically engaging with classical Indian texts to ensure they in rather than static cultural artifices. When it is static, it is not growing, it is not evolving, then the knowledge system dies a natural death. But folklore and Indian knowledge system kind of texts, they evolve, they grow. Every time somebody will add something to it. Recently, I was reading an essay about the nexus between oral and written traditions. What is the nexus there? So one critique, he claims that written literature is less authentic, oral literature is more authentic. Though I may not agree to that. Also, I agree to some extent, but not completely. He says that written literature can have limitations because it is the point of view of one person. Like this book is point of view of Nandini. It can be wrong. It can be right. It can be biased. It may have gender bias. It may have linguistic bias, caste, religion, any kind of bias. If it can be anti some systems written by one author, it can have biases. It has limitations. But when it is oral literature, he claims it evolves from generation to generation. Like my grandparents used to talk about Sita in a different way. Then my parents talked about Sita in another way, keeping in view the need of the hour of their generation. Now we are talking about Sita in a much different way. We are keeping our contemporary needs, requirements in our mind when we are presenting Sita. So what is oral literature? When there is orality, when it is passed on from generation to generation, then new ideas will come to the text, new poetry, new ideas, new ideologies, and new concepts, new worldviews will come into that text, and the text will evolve. The text will be better, and the text will be contemporary to every generation. But if you read a text which was written 200 years ago, and you try to apply those ideas to our children today, like in Odisha, there are actually books are available about crime, Kandana. When a girl got married to somebody, before her marriage, she was given that Kandana book. Kandana book means the Rone wala book. She was given, and that book was full of poetry. And the poetry was like, dear parents, why didn't you kill me when I was born? You could have done a female feticide before I was born, so that today I didn't have to leave you and go to my in-laws' house. And then, dear parents, you should have thrown me into the well, that poetry, into the well, because being born as a girl is a curse. So I'm leaving you today and going to my in-laws' house. And those kind of poetry is there. Very sing-song voice and rhyme scheme is there. God knows who wrote that. And those books are there hundreds of years ago. If I give those books to my daughter today, I don't have a daughter, of course, but if I had a daughter, had I given that book to her, she would have laughed at me. That I am getting married to somebody of my choice. My marriage is my choice. I'm going to be a happy bride and I'm going to pursue a career after my marriage. I'm going to take care of myself and my husband is going to take care of me. We are going to be complementary to each other. I should not have died as a female. I mean, you shouldn't have done a female feticide. You shouldn't have killed me. So, texts evolve with time and oral literary texts only evolve. Written texts will not evolve. They are documented, they are written, they are static. So this is where, new historicists and cultural materialists, they give importance to folklore. If you look at a text from a new historicist approach, when two texts are read parallelly, then one text always overshadows another text, like history and literature. If you look at British literature, look at Chaucer, or maybe Shakespeare, or the Elizabethan wits, or even the neoclassicals like, Dryden and Poe, or maybe the Victorians, Tennyson and all of the Browning and them. You look at their literature and you look at the history of English literature. You compare these two. So they are so static that Queen Victoria was like this and the Victorian literature was like this. The three C's, So written texts have a particular point of view. But if it is oral literature, the points of view will change. My point of view will change when my daughter uses it. Then the next generation. This is where I remember a text by Ashapurna Devi, Bengali writer, which I have, of course, I have read the text in English translation. Pratham Pratishruti is about a girl, Subarna, who wanted to study, but she could not complete her education because she was forced to marry at a young age. And then after that, Subarnalata. And then Subarnalata, no, in the first text, Satyavati. Second one, Subarna and Subarnalata. She gets a chance to read to some extent. And then third text is Bakul Katha. Bakul is the third generation woman in that series of 3 novels, where Bakul becomes, a paragon of advanced science, technology, medicine, knowledge, and she is educated and she fulfills all the desires of her grandmother Satyavati. So even in oral literatures, this is how generation after generation, new ideas are materialized. We may end up with some ideas and our next generation may end up by materializing those. So this is how, my next question is the methodologies that should be employed. Methodologies are very, very important. In the beginning, I told, now I also repeat that don't tell stories in the classrooms when it is Indian knowledge systems or Hindu studies or folklore. Storytelling is passe. Don't tell stories. Give stories as examples. Like Manoj Das, Padma Shri, late Professor Manoj Das. He told us stories about Abolukara and many stories. But in a very critical perspective, he used to place the stories. So be wise and create a critical perspective in your classroom. Then you can present your stories, folk tales, or anything for that matter. So my next question is, how can a decolonized approach to Indian knowledge systems create a more globally relevant intellectual framework without falling into essentialism or political co-option? Political co-options are very, very, dangerous, You have some political opinion, some political ideology. If you want to carry it to your classroom and then you use some text as your pretext, then it is going to be harmful for you as a teacher and a researcher, and it's going to be harmful for our students because students listen to the teachers in a much better way than they listen to the parents. So you are playing an important role. Understand the position, the role that God has assigned to you as a teacher, and do not carry any decolonized approach and political or any class radiates and transcends colonial epistemologies when it is in the classroom. It encompasses a rich corpus of Hindu studies, Indian Bhasha literatures, Indian English literature, Bharatiya linguistics, science and technology, indigenous medicines, folk literature, classical literature. However, the pedagogy surrounding IKS has been riddled with, contestations ranging from epistemic erasures to political appropriation. So this is where you have to take care, re-examine the Vedic texts, Upanishadic philosophies, and Dharma Shastras and all these things, and then try to create a marginalized canon Indian Bhasha literatures. When it is Indian literature, look at the marginalized canons. Only a few texts have been given due importance. Many texts have been silenced. Studying texts in Bangla, Tamil, Marathi, Telugu, Odia, and other languages that challenge the nationalist and post-colonial appropriations is something that you have to look at. And then, okay, I will just come to when you have a pedagogical approach to the syllabus design, now you are a university, you have a center for Indian knowledge systems, like Dr. Ray told me now. The center should do some important work. The object of your courses, like I talked about the Indian knowledge systems BA program I just discussed, is to emphasize that Oriental and Occidental philosophies are not antithetical. They are not opposing each other. Rather, in contrast to that, the traditionalists perceive it, they do not perceive the world in a dualistic perspective. Both Oriental and Occidental philosophy emphasize on causes and consequences of anything. Many people believe, and they still believe, that Rudyard Kipling's ideas that East is East and West is West is still there. But I think it's not there. There is fluidity. East and West have exchanged hands. But in academia, especially in literature, there has always been an effort to problematize these traditional thought processes. Acquired amalgamation of Oriental and Occidental philosophies has emerged to be an area of critical concern in contemporary literary research. It has been widely used by the academics, policy planners. Like you look at our, NPS document, the policy planners have thought about it. Research, in the NPS document, they haven't written anywhere to get rid of European and American or Australian literatures. They have asked us to include more, to be more inclusive rather than exclusive. So the policy planners, the researchers and the critics, they do study the origin of a theory where both Eastern and Western literatures exchange hands and they create a new genre. In this program, you can attempt to elucidate the representations of Western and Eastern judgments under the Eastern eye. That is important. Look at the Western and Eastern literatures under the Eastern eye, not under the Western eye. Like Chandra Talpade Mohanty, she has one essay under the Western eye. We have been suffering, or we have been misrepresenting our literatures and cultures under the Western eye. Now go to Eastern eye, have an Oriental eye, and the research of the programs may have a counter discourse to Eurocentrism. Teach European literature, but without Eurocentrism. Hinduism and the Indian epics and Puranas, they are replete with fables, parables, stories, and narratives, which chronicle scientific ideas interwoven into the narratives. The history of Hinduism in India can be traced back to antiquity. Hinduism is one of the world's oldest religions, if you know. And though a lot of it may have been lost to the ravages of time, there is ample evidence of the same in temples, cave paintings. Go to cave paintings. Amitabh Ghosh, the Indian English writer, novelist, he uses a lot of. Somebody please mute yourself.
Let's come down. Does not sleep. No age, no shame. Girl.
Please mute yourself. Somebody is talking.
Utkarsh, please mute yourself.
Why do you allow everybody to join as panelists? Like when we do our webinars, we allow only 5 people as rest. We give another link to them
allowed,
to join.
I don't know why he's just joined.
Okay, no
on
problem.
his own.
So sure. Okay, so there is ample evidence in the temples, in the cave paintings, architectural marvels, folk narratives, and extant manuscripts. Look at our tradition of the manuscripts. Our manuscripts were all handwritten. The objective of your program may be to apprise your students with intellectual and scientific traditions of ancient India preserved in the Indian knowledge systems. And ancient Indian knowledge systems, they are a repository of all forms of knowledge systems like mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, and geography, physics, chemistry, biology, and medicine, and literature and languages, to name a few. On and instances of the scientific disciplines can be found in plenty of Indian epics like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, the Puranas, the Siddhantas, and among other literatures which are important facets of our knowledge systems. Here I remember H.T. Coleridge, the Indologist who worked extensively on Indian astronomy. He concluded that Indian astronomical texts contain information which are both subtle and unique in their conception. The German philologist Max Muller, in his famous essay, India, What Can It Teach Us? Just read this essay by Max Muller. India, what can it teach us? He makes the resounding claim that the roots of all modern scientific disciplines as well as the beginnings of philosophy of the world can be found in the Vedas. And he advocates for the study of ancient Indian literature with the same rigor as Roman and Greek literature. In our English classrooms, we teach Greek and Roman literature every day. But when it comes to teaching Ramayana and Mahabharata, or the Vedas for that matter, people will raise their eyebrows. If it is Veda or Ramayana or Gita or something like that, they can teach Roman and Greek. Iliad, Odyssey, they can teach. But when it comes to our text, people will have problems. But Max Muller wrote that the basic idea of the world philosophy can be found in the Vedas. one of the most interesting aspects of ancient Indian text is the methods used for the transfer of scientific knowledges from generation to generation. Again, since the beginning, I've been talking about pedagogy and methodology, research methodology. Now, Max Muller also talks about the research methodology or the methods through which we transfer the scientific knowledge from generation to generation. All significant scientific knowledge systems imparted through the medium of stories. In storytelling methods, we are transferring our scientific knowledge systems through research, proper research methodology, transmitted orally and then preserved through memory. Nemo culture, memory culture. Dr. Babu, please talk to me about memory culture later on. I would like to take another lecture with you people about memory culture someday. MNEMO, Nemo culture is coming up in a big way as a part of our research in our departments. So memory culture, Nemo culture talks about the scientific knowledge systems imparted through the medium of stories, transmitted orally and transmitted through memory. Memory plays a very important role. Even today, if you ask me, I think I have memorized more than 700 to 800 texts. I like to memorize. I repeat a text to myself when I'm driving, when I'm traveling. I keep on chanting one text and then I memorize it. When you memorize hundreds and hundreds of texts, maybe at the end of the day, you will be in a better position to be an orator or maybe write your own text, develop your own ideology. People can criticize the rote learning culture of an Indian knowledge systems. But in our Gurukul systems, the students were asked to memorize, to do rote learning, to mug up things. I think there is no harm if you mug up, if you learn by heart some interesting and important texts which have shaped you, which have created you. India has been created by those texts. So, to Max Muller, all these texts align with the Indian philosophical systems and they discuss the concepts of the Indian traditions from the Oriental to the modern, along with the references of the historic texts. So, the MA program, the BA program that I designed on Indian knowledge system that deals with ideas, concepts, and tales from the Indian knowledge system with a deep critical engagement with these texts. I have taken many books. I will name a few. The blocks and the chapters cover the following, like understanding the phrase Indian knowledge systems. What is Indian? Bharatiya, what is knowledge and what is system? System is a systematic representation, not in a storytelling method exactly, but using proper research methodology. So Indian knowledge can be given to the students in a very, very systematic manner. And then it's historicity, geographic, and life perception. By teaching Indian knowledge systems, we prepare our students for life. Not just a degree or a diploma or a certificate, but we prepare our students for life. That is the whole idea. Like in any difficult situation in life, how will they handle, how will they deal with it? In the IAS and IPS and all those, civil services selection committees, we ask these kind of questions. We give them some situations and we ask them how much they are prepared for life. Then the idea of eternal and eternal order systems in Indian knowledges, that is one idea I have taken. The concept of the soul, rebirth, salvation in Indian knowledge systems, and are they scientifically correct? That is one chapter. And these things are from the UGC NET syllabus. I have taken directly from the UGC NET syllabus and I have tried to materialize those in the syllabus. Everything is from the UGC NET exam. The concept of the soul, rebirth, and the next is ancient system of logic or pramana. Pramana, logic. Logic is a very important subject during our undergrad days. Then Hindu dialogic tradition. This is also from the UGC NET examination. Hindu dialogic tradition. Then intellectual Hinduism, the scientific explanations and their disciplines like specific historicity and free flow of knowledge systems. Free flow, like I said, knowledge sharing is knowledge production. How the Hindu texts deal with knowledge sharing and knowledge production. The next is Indian knowledge systems beyond ritualism. Indian knowledge systems as alternative history. History and alternative history. History is written by the winner. The winner. Then what happens? There is also one loser, like Napoleon Bonaparte or Alexander the Great. They were the winners. Then what happened to the losers? Their history was written by ethnomusicologists through folklore, through folk music. So even the loser has a story to tell. And ethnomusicologists, historians, they take up the responsibility of writing the intellect, the Hindu in a folklore and in a Indian knowledge systems approach. They write the history of the loser. I have tried to take those kind of things. Intellectual Hinduism, the scientific explanation and the discipline specific historicity and the free flow of knowledge systems, and alternative histories, which is ethnomusicology. Do some research on ethnomusicology. Take this term, take it home and work on that. And then Indian knowledge systems beyond ritualism. Indian knowledge systems, their universality, inclusivity, and flexibility, three terms that I truly, truly appreciate. Indian knowledge systems and the Oriental explanations, IKS as evolution and revolution. Evolution, no doubt, and revolutionary ideas. Indian knowledge systems problematizing Eurocentrism, Hindu philosophical thoughts in Western literature, Indian knowledge systems and Buddhism, a methodological interpretation, Indian knowledge systems and Jainism, a methodological interpretation, Indian knowledge systems and transcendentalism, so much of theory, transcendentalism. Then Hindu studies and Bhakti movement, then Panini's Ashtadhyaya, Hindu studies beyond the national boundaries, and Indic interpretation. Indic studies is coming up in a big way, and Indic interpretation. Then the 14 branches of learning in ancient India. There are 14 branches, Chausati Kala, and 14 branches of learning in ancient India. Indian philosophical system, astronomy and Hindu studies, health and well-being in Hindu studies, IKS and architecture, IKS and mathematics, IKS and chemistry and metallurgy, IKS and ecology, IKS and Kala, arts, IKS and in Jagannath culture, Saivism and Shaktism, then the Puranas, then the cosmology, Brahmanda Purana, evolution, Matsya Purana, solar system, Vayu Purana, Hiranyagarbha, Markandeya Purana, the Ramayans, the many Ramayans, not just Valmiki or Ramcharitmanas, but the folk Ramayans also. The many Ramayans, then oceanography and Ram Setu, then advances in aviation and Pushpak Viman, time and space in the Ramayana, many Mahabharats, represented how Abhimanyu entered into the Chakravyuha because he understood half of the geometry, then other half when his mother got into sleep. He could not listen to the other half of the geometry, so he could not come out of the Chakravyuha. So look at the science behind it. Abhimanyu was listening inside the womb, the mother. He was listening to the geometry, and then he has understood it. So he could enter into the Chakravyuha. That chapter, I will share it with Dr. Babu today. He will share it to all of you. That's full of mathematics. Only 1 or 2 paragraphs are the stories from the Mahabharata, how Abhimanyu got into the Chakravyuha, then he could not come out and he was killed. That's the story. But the geometry behind entering the Chakravyuha is given in detailed manner. I think some 10 to 11 pages, only the geometry of the Chakravyuha. Then Abhimanyu dies. And then the next part of the geometry, how Abhimanyu could have come out. So the next part of the geometry of getting out of the Chakravyuha. So look at the scientific approach. Look at the mathematical approach. And I was so impressed by the chapter. When I prepared the chapter, I was really going through a tough time. I used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, read that geography and mathematics and the geometry, and try to understand. Understanding Indian knowledge systems will take a whole lot of your energy and your time. People are not willing to read. So if somebody has written this kind of chapter, they will just claim that this person is Hindu. Or this person is, getting into an ideology and propagating Hinduism. No, it's not so. You are talking mathematics, you are talking geometry. And then the next chapter is the Upanishads, the creation of the universe, the Siddhantas, Surya Siddhanta, Pancha Siddhanta, Siddhant kind of text that we have talked about. And apart from that, there is another course, IKS course structure, which I have already presented for an MA in Indian knowledge systems, which I will talk later on. Now I'm getting late. I have a meeting in another 10 minutes. So in MA in Indian knowledge systems, so there are so many courses. The course 1 is about exploring the Indian knowledge systems, and the course 2 is about the introduction of Indian knowledge systems in higher education, and then the NEP document, and then literature and languages, and then spirituality and sciences, and then there are courses on talking about Indian knowledge systems from Western perspective, talking about Western literature from Indian perspective. So those things are there. I'll share all the documents with Dr. Babu. I wish I could talk for 2 more hours. I'm so enthusiastic to talk about these things that we are introducing as a part of our syllabus. And I tell you, 14,000, 15,000 students are enrolling into these courses. People really want to know what is happening in Indian knowledge systems. So there will be no dearth of your students in Amity University. You are a university, you will definitely look at admissions, which is important for you. But if you introduce these courses, I tell you, trust me, there will be no dearth of admissions. And you can just properly, advertise your courses. You can talk about those in social media platforms, and you can use my good office to publicize your courses. I'll always be there because I'm all
thank you, Dr. Sahu. I want our Center of Excellence to collaborate with you and get the courses from you so that we too can, get the things we are looking for, the learning processes that we are looking for to, subdue the Western philosophies in the sense of subjugation of the mind. And I'm so thankful to you, Dr. Nandini, for speaking so well. And I will be very happy that my students have heard you. And also I will be getting in touch with you so that I can collaborate on various subjects and take the syllabus and introduce them into our department as well. So
Yes.
very, I'm really very grateful to you for giving us your precious times. And I hope that in future also you will get some time to speak to our students and, their thought processes will start differing, which they need to. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your patient hearing. I am all for research, and I think I'll always be available when it is a lecture or doing some written work for
Yeah.
any university for that matter. So please, you can count on me.
Thank you
And
so
all,
much.
I'm sure the students
Thank
have a lot of questions to Dr. Babu. Please mail me the questions. My email ID is with you. I'll respond to each mail. Don't worry. Now I have to log out. I have a meeting.
All right, madam. All right.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Namaskar.
Won't they give the vote of thanks?
Yes, madam. Anushka.
Yes. Thank you everyone who participated in this discussion. And a huge thank you again to Dr. Professor Nandini Sahu for sharing her expertise with us today. Before we finally close the session, I would like to invite Ms. Dilraj, a final year student, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's my honor to extend a heartful vote of thanks on behalf of Amity School of Languages to our esteemed guest, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu, for taking the time to share her knowledge and insights with us today. Your lecture on the Indian knowledge system was truly enlightening and engaging. The depth of your expertise and the clarity with which you explained the complex concepts have greatly increased our understanding. I would also like to express our gratitude to Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, Head of the Institute of Amity School of Languages, Faculty Coordinators Dr. ABR Prasad, Dr. Manjri Johri, Dr. Archana Gupta, and Dr. Rohit Yadav for their efforts in organizing this insightful session. A special thanks to our student coordinators, Ms. Nana, Ms. Disha Tripathi, and Mr. Prabhat, and our anchors, Ms. Anushka Gauryar and Ms. Khushi, faculty members who joined, and all the attendees for their active participation, which made this session even more interactive and meaningful. We sincerely appreciate your time in sharing your knowledge, and we hope to have the opportunity to learn from you again in the future. Once again, thank you, Professor Dr. Nandini Sahu, and thank you all for being a part of this wonderful session.
We hope you all found this session as inspiring and informative as we did. At last, I would request all of you to switch on your cameras for a group photograph.
Please switch on your cameras. Dilraj and girls. Diana.
I again request you to switch on your cameras.
Somebody can take the group.
Today we are. Thank
Hello.
you so much for organizing this session.
Please switch on your
Can
cameras.
we leave? Can we leave the session now?
Those who are present, you can kindly switch on your cameras so that we can take the group photograph.
कोई बात नहीं, ले लो, photograph. Thank you.
Have you taken?
Ah, all the best.
Yes.
Thank you once again for being with us, and we hope to see you at a future event. Take care and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.